And this is why people vote for Trump. They say in politics, liberals are the gas pedal and conservatives are the brakes. And I'm generally with the gas pedal, but not if we're driving off a cliff. On the trans issue, America is no ands, ifs, or buts about it, absolutely alone in the world now, an outlier country. Last month, England's National Health Service announced that there's not enough evidence to support the safety or clinical effectiveness of puberty blockers for third graders, and that they were going to stop fumbling around with children's privates, because that's Prince Andrew's job.
You ever notice how sometimes reality just smacks the narrative right out of people's hands? That's exactly what happened when Bill Maher, of all people, took a flamethrower to the woke fantasy that Canada is this glittering paradise the rest of the world should copy. Yeah, you heard that right. Bill Maher, a guy who spent decades on the left, just told the woke utopia crowd to pump the brakes before we all drive straight off a cliff. And that's not an exaggeration. That's literally his metaphor. Liberals are the gas pedal, conservatives are the brakes. And as Maher put it, he's usually fine with pushing forward. Unless, of course, we're headed straight for disaster. And honestly, can you blame him? On issue after issue, from gender ideology to open borders, the so-called progressives have gone so far left, they've lapped common sense entirely. America, he says, has become an outlier, alone in the world on some of these issues, especially when it comes to kids and gender. Even England's National Health Service, yes, England, has now said there isn't enough evidence to prove puberty blockers are safe or effective for children, so they're pulling back. Imagine that. And Bill being Bill, he doesn't stop there. He throws in a Prince Andrew jab about who should be fumbling around with children's privates. Brutal, classic Maher. But here's the thing. He's not just roasting for laughs, he's making a point, and it's one that cuts deeper than most people on the left want to admit. For years, progressives have looked north and said, be more like Canada. They painted this picture of Canada as some kind of liberal Disneyland, polite, perfect, and perpetually progressive, a magical snow globe of equality and good intentions. But Maher, he's not buying that fairy tale. He's looking at the cold, hard numbers, and they're ugly. Canada added 1.3 million people last year alone. That might not sound like much until you scale it. That's the US equivalent of adding 11 million new residents in a single year. And what did that do? It detonated their housing market. Canada is now staring down a shortfall of 3.5 million homes by 2030. Let that sink in. 3.5 million missing houses, families priced out, young people giving up on home ownership, and tent cities popping up like mushrooms after rain.
Canada was where every woke white college kid wearing pajama pants outdoors who'd had it up to here with America's racist patriarchy dreamt of living someday. I mean, besides Gaza. There's only one problem with thinking everything's better in Canada. It's not. Not anymore, anyway. Last year, Canada added 1.3 million people, which is a lot in 1 year, the equivalent of the US adding 11 million migrants in 1 year. And now, they're experiencing a housing crisis even worse than ours. And we're sleeping in tents.
Sound familiar? Yeah, it's deja vu for every American city that's been preaching the same open border, open everything gospel. Maher nails it with his signature wit. He jokes that if Barbie moved to Winnipeg, she wouldn't be able to afford her dream house, and Ken would be flipping donuts at Tim Hortons. Funny, but depressingly accurate. The average home in the US costs about $350,000. In Canada, nearly $500,000, and that's the national average. In cities like Toronto or Vancouver, you're looking at $800,000 to over $1 million. Easy. These aren't paradise prices. These are panic prices. And the woke left, they still hold up Canada like it's the promised land. Maher's point is painfully simple. If America copies Canada's model, we're not building a utopia. We're building an eviction notice for half the country.
The median price of a home here is $346 grand. In Canada, converted to US dollars, it's $487. If Barbie moved to Winnipeg, she wouldn't be able to afford her dream house, and Ken would be working at Tim Hortons.
Then there's the kicker. Canada's got the highest debt to GDP ratio in the G7. Translation, they owe more than anyone else in the club. Even Maher laughs and admits he doesn't know what that exactly means, but he knows it sounds bad. And he's right, it is bad. And what about that beloved free healthcare Canadians love to brag about? Maher drops the curtain on that too. Turns out Canada's universal healthcare system ranks dead last among high-income nations for access to primary care. healthcare. Want to see a doctor within a day or two? Good luck. People are waiting weeks, sometimes months, and they're spending 13% of their entire economy to keep that mess going. So much for free.
And because of mortgage debt, Canada has the highest debt to GDP ratio of any G7 nation. I don't know what that means, but it sounds bad. So does their vaunted healthcare system, which ranks dead last among high-income countries in access to primary healthcare and ability to see a doctor in a day or two. And it's not for lack of spending. Of the 30 countries with universal coverage, Canada spends over 13% of its economy on it, which is a lot of money for free health care.
This isn't a conservative smear job. This is Bill Maher, one of the left's own, saying the quiet part out loud. If a guy like him is warning you, maybe it's time to listen, because this isn't just a comedy rant. It's a mirror being held up to America. Maher's basically saying, hey, liberals, is this the model you really want? Because if you think Canada's got it all figured out, you haven't been paying attention. And that's when he drops the moral of the story. Yes, you can move too far left. When you do, you don't just lose conservatives, you lose the middle. And when the middle walks away, you hand the keys to the other side. That's not a right-wing slogan, that's political gravity.
Look, I'm not saying Canada still isn't a great country. It is, but those aren't paradise numbers. If Canada was an apartment, the lead feature might be America adjacent. And if America was a rental car, Canada would be America or similar. And again, honestly, Canada, I'm not saying any of this because I enjoy it. I don't, because I've always enjoyed you. But I need to cite you as a cautionary tale to help my country. And the moral of that tale is, yes, you can move too far left. And when you do, you wind up pushing the people in the middle to the right.
We've seen it before. Look at Joe Rogan, a guy who used to be the poster child for edgy liberalism. Now he's right-wing because he asks basic questions. Elon Musk built electric cars, sends rockets into space. But because he won't kneel at the altar of woke ideology, he's labeled conservative too. Maher's not turning into a MAGA guy. He's just standing still while his party sprints off a cliff. And from that perspective, yeah, he looks conservative. And Canada is the cautionary tale. Remember that Canadian shop teacher Kayla Lemieux, the one with, let's say, unmissable prosthetics who insisted on teaching children while the school defended it as gender expression?
At its worst, Canada is what American voters think happens when there's no one putting a check on extreme wokeness. Like the saga of Canadian shop teacher Kayla Lemieux, whose pronouns are she, her, and those. Kayla is now back to being a guy named Kerry, but 2 years ago, when they showed up to teach children, the progressive high school they taught at said that they, the school, not the person. Really, you couldn't have found another word. We were using that one. Anyway, okay. They were committed to a safe environment for gender expression. Safe for who? What about the children?
Maher absolutely skewers that one too. He jokes about how once upon a time, Russ Meyer made low-budget movies featuring women with cartoonish proportions, and that was considered too explicit for kids. And yet, in 2023, that's what passes as progress in the classroom. He's not wrong, it's chaos masquerading as compassion, and that's really the core of it.
What about the equipment in that shop class? You know, there was once a weirdo D-list movie producer in the 60s named Russ Meyer who made low-budget B movies like Faster Pussycat Kill Kill and Beyond the Valley of the Dolls, always featuring women who look like this. His movies played in houses and were featured in Hustler and Playboy. Okay, fine, but who says, no, when it comes to huge, ridiculous, let's save that for the kids?
When everyone gets to decide reality and demand everyone else plays along, you don't get inclusivity, you get confusion. Students left scratching their heads, wondering who exactly is teaching them that day. Adults so terrified of being offensive that they can't even say what's true anymore. This isn't progress, it's theater, and not the good kind. It's a tragicomedy of contradictions, with kids as the audience.
And this is why people vote for Trump. They say in politics, liberals are the gas pedal and conservatives are the brakes. And I'm generally with the gas pedal, but not if we're driving off a cliff. On the trans issue, America is no ands, ifs, or buts about it, absolutely alone in the world now, an outlier country. Last month, England's National Health Service announced that there's not enough evidence to support the safety or clinical effectiveness of puberty blockers for third graders, and that they were going to stop fumbling around with children's privates, because that's Prince Andrew's job.
Maher drives it home. You can move too far left, and when you do, you don't get enlightenment, you get backlash. That's why people vote for Trump. That's not a punchline, that's the punch. People didn't flock to Trump because they suddenly became racist or wanted chaos. They did it because they were sick of the endless wokeness, the gender lectures, the self-flagellation, and the ideological policing. The Democrats turned into a scolding committee obsessed with pronouns, policing jokes, and rewriting history instead of fixing the country. Americans don't vote for lectures, they vote for leadership, and the left forgot that. Even many liberals are waking up to it. They didn't leave the left left them. It sprinted into this bizarre parallel universe where facts are offensive, biology is optional, and logic is a hate crime. And that's why Maher's voice hits so hard, because it's not coming from a right-wing echo chamber, it's coming from inside the house.
So too with all the other good place countries, in direct opposition to America's choice to affirm children's wishes on switching gender, no matter the age or psychiatric history. The far left, which always like to use, well, Europe does it. Yeah, no, that doesn't work on this one anymore.
And he's not just talking about gender politics, he's looking at immigration too. He points out that Sweden, another supposed progressive dream country, opened its borders wide since 2010, taking in over 1.5 million migrants. Now, 20% of Sweden's population is foreign-born. What happened next? A collapse in the education system, gang wars, and Europe's highest rate of deadly shootings. That's not xenophobia, that's data. And when liberals say, well, blaming immigrants is racist, Maher fires back with the question everyone else is afraid to ask. Yeah, but is it true? Because facts don't care about feelings, and pretending they do doesn't make the problems disappear. It just guarantees they'll get worse until voters finally snap and hand power to someone who promises to fix it. And as Maher warns, you're not gonna like who that person is. He's right.
Or on immigration. Sweden opened its borders to over 1.5 million immigrants since 2010, and now 20% of its citizens are foreign-born, and its education system is tanking, and it has Europe's highest rate of gangland killings. And one result is that the far-right parties are in the government now there for the first time. To which liberals say blaming immigrants for the rising crime rate is racist. Yeah, but is it true? Of course it's true. It's not a coincidence the quality of life went down after the Somali gangs started a drug turf war using hand grenades. Calling it racist doesn't solve the problem. It hands future elections to someone who will solve the problem and who, I promise, you're not going to like.
Look around. Europe's seeing a surge of far-right parties because people are tired of being gaslit. They're tired of elites pretending everything's fine while neighborhoods crumble. Call it racist all you want. People still vote with their eyes and their wallets. Here in the US, we're not far behind. The border's a disaster zone. Fentanyl is pouring in, wiping out entire communities. And while the left wraps it all in compassion and moral virtue, real families are burying their kids. That's not compassion, that's negligence. When empathy blinds you to reality, it stops being noble and starts being destructive. Maher's message cuts through the noise. If America can't control its borders, it can't protect its people. And without protection, there's no peace. Just chaos dressed up as progress. By the end of his monologue, Maher's done more than roast Canada. He's exposed a bigger truth about the West. The more we worship ideology over practicality, the faster everything breaks. Housing collapses, classrooms lose clarity, borders dissolve, and regular people, the ones who actually make up a country, pay the price. That's why this hits so hard, because it's not just about Canada, it's about us. It's about what happens when a nation drifts too far into fantasy